Hi, my name is Cecile Johnson. I'm CEO of African Development Plan, and I'm here today as part of Global City Unity's community outreach to keep you informed about issues affecting the Black community, issues that require us to be unified and on one accord so we can find solutions. This series is a show of shows as part of a project that we call Connecting the Dots, a 2015 response to issues facing the Black community in Chicago, Illinois, and a collaboration between African Development Plan and the National Black Agenda Consortium, Chicago. Today, I would like to welcome my guest, Justina Winfrey, who has been a local voice in Chicago on the issue of foreclosures, where she has uncovered some very interesting stuff, some fraudulent behavior within the public records regarding PIN changes. And so she's going to tell you a little bit about that. And we also have attorney Naomi Davis, who is the CEO of Blacks in Green, who will focus on redevelopment and some of the things that we can do in response to this large number of foreclosures. So today's show is going to be about foreclosures and solutions to that. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks for having us, Cecile.
Welcome. Now, Justina, give us a little bit of background on yourself and tell us, how did you get involved in this foreclosure? Because this is not a fun topic, so something must have happened to get you here.
I'm the founder of Computer Advancement and Bilingual Education, C.A.B.E. In the Austin community, the property in question, we've actually repurposed for the community. I am also a founding member of the National Black Agenda Consortium, and I am the principal consultant for Cecile Winfrey Consulting.
Okay.
The situation that brought us here today started in 2008 with the servicer saying you don't qualify for a forbearance review or a forbearance plan if in fact you're not in foreclosure yet. So imagine a family already paying twice a month to ensure that their interest rate is lower and that they can pay the property off even sooner. Less than 10 years left to pay the property off. One member of the household loses employment. In turn, like many other families, you look at the forbearance plan through the servicers. At that time, before the National Mortgage Foreclosure Settlement, in 2008, servicers and even 2009 were telling families, if you don't qualify for the forbearance plan because you're not 90 days behind, you're not in foreclosure yet. So unfortunately, many families like myself pondered the thought of allowing the mortgage to go into foreclosure so that we could qualify for the forbearance plan.
Okay.
But before doing that, we simply brought the mortgage down and paid it once a month rather instead of twice a month, in which the interest rate would still, we would have to stretch the payments out even longer instead of it being less than 10 years left to pay. Well, unfortunately, we decided to go into foreclosure 90 days behind so that we could qualify for the forbearance plan. Now, we made this request for 6 months through the servicer from 2008, the fall of 2008 or so, up until 2009. We made these requests, and finally through NACA, we were able to receive the forbearance plan. After paying the forbearance plan on time every month, ensuring that the payments were made to the servicer, by the fourth payment, the servicer rejected the payment. They canceled it officially through Western Union, and I ultimately found myself in a class action suit with Western Union and many other homeowners whom had their payments canceled.
Why did they do that?
Once they cancel the payment, they proceed with the foreclosure,
okay,
as if you had not been in a payment plan with them in the forbearance plan. So payment was canceled. They proceeded with foreclosure within a week. The foreclosure and the lease pendants have been filed.
Okay.
Fast forwarding, that is considered dual tracking. Our state settled with the National Mortgage Foreclosure Settlement, in which homeowners received a settlement check nationwide and even in Chicago. But the problem is there's no recourse even after you receive this checks, and the servicers have basically said that they have that they didn't properly process the paperwork.
Okay, so I'm trying to get this clear. You had an issue with your property, right? Someone lost a job in the house, and you were paying twice a month, so you were actually way ahead. Should have been ahead on your mortgage.
Yes.
You then changed it to once a month, so now you're back really on schedule, which means you should still have been ahead. You knew you had a crisis, so you asked for forbearance, but because you were not in default, they didn't want to talk to you.
Correct.
So you then went into default in order to qualify.
Yes.
You did qualify, then you were, repayment plan was made, right? And then you were now paying on schedule. 4th month in, you got hit with a foreclosure.
A cancellation.
A cancellation which led to foreclosure.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that in this process, you know, when I started out, I asked a question, what got you started? So that got you started, but something else happened. When did this PIN issue become an issue?
Well, I audited my land records, just that simple. I went to the Recorder of Deeds site, cookrecorder.com, and I looked up my PIN number that was on my original mortgage paperwork. And that PIN number, after looking through all of the documents in the land records, I found that 2 of my neighbors' mortgages, their documents existed in that same chain of title when I looked up my PIN number, which is 1616208032000. When you look up that PIN number at cookrecorder.com, you will not see mortgages in those land records right now, unfortunately. Once the Recorder of Deeds office had been notified, within 48 hours, that entire chain of title changed online. Well, fortunately, I print screened all of that information. So when you all have an opportunity, you can go to www.jlwinfreyconsulting.com or IllinoisForeclosureFraud.com, and you can have an opportunity to review those documents.
Okay, so what you're saying is that, again, just for the public clarity, when you did your, I don't know many people who would do this, all right? So you did an audit of your land records, and then it's there that you noticed that there was a flaw in the PINs, and that other people whose PINs information or mortgage information was now on yours.
Correct.
Okay. And that once you notified them, it changed miraculously in 48 hours?
Yes.
We don't get service that quickly in the state of Illinois, much less Chicago. So what's that all about?
Well, one, our PIN number, let me take a step back. Not only does that affect my chain of title, it affects the other 2 homeowners that are next door to me, because they did not properly consolidate the PIN numbers when we purchased that land, or when the developer purchased the land and they built those homes. At that time, for those very first, and these are properties built from the ground up, but at that time, the developers and all of the folks who were involved were to go to the assessor's office and petition to have that lot and those PIN numbers divided out from 1 PIN number to 3. Well, unfortunately, down a few houses down, my neighbor has 5 PIN numbers in his land record documents. 5 PIN numbers. None of our PIN numbers among the Quincy Homeowners Association in the Austin community have been properly consolidated. Not only in the Austin community has this happened, but this has also happened in Dalton, Harvey, Inglewood, and West Woodlawn.
Is it just those places?
No, not just those places. I've seen PIN numbers changed miraculously in Will County. I began to audit the land records in Cook County, for lack of better terms, and look into all of the mortgage documents. It's a lot of work, but we have a pretty strong team of attorneys who have their sleeves rolled up, and we're looking at, ultimately, we need the public to understand that your legacies are being impacted by the bait and switch by a change of hand.
What do you mean by that? The legacy is being impacted?
Well, our PIN numbers are like our social security number. The PIN number issue is just a drop in the bucket, okay? Our PIN numbers are like our social security numbers. They don't change. But when you look at David Orr's job, okay, David Orr is to ensure that, one, we have our PIN numbers because those are our tax parcel ID numbers. This is how we pay our property taxes. The assessor's office, Cook County Assessor's Office, Joseph Berrios, creates those PIN numbers, okay? And the Cook County Recorder of Deeds office records mortgage documents and land records and things of that nature. At this point, several years ago, let's take a step back, we had a city redistricting, okay? Our PIN numbers, and this is why we need a land records audit on so many levels, because our PIN numbers, once they were changed, that affects our city dividing lines.
That's community boundaries?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That is a whole, that's a whole nother level of investigatory work that needs to be done. But we do need a Cook County land records audit.
Okay, so let me tie in something here. A few months ago, before we had the elections for mayor and aldermen in the city of Chicago, there was a group, which both of you are members of, and full disclosure, so am I, called the Coalition of Black Community Organizations. And the Coalition of Black Community Organizations, it says here, was a spontaneous collaboration of community organizations, each called to respond to the crisis observed in Chicago's Black community. Our mission is to advance civic engagement with tools that move churches, schools, and organizations to act in their political self-interest. The creation of a municipal candidate questionnaire, the first of our tools, highlights the expectations and demands of Black Chicago and the responsibility of those seeking to represent us in government. Now, when we go to this questionnaire, which was very lengthy, is about 59 questions, broken into fiscal, infrastructure, economic development, jobs, education, housing, land use, culture, organizing, justice, and green and healthy neighborhoods. So all of this came at a point where the Black community, the collaborative, was trying to figure out, well, what are the issues that should be important to us and should be important to those who are running for office. Under housing and land use, there was a number of questions. Question number 29 said land records audit, right? A preliminary review of land records created from foreclosures indicates ongoing foreclosures based on illegal robo-signing, fraudulent mortgage assignments, and other improprieties. So that ties into that, right? Lender disclosures. Would you support an ordinance that would require all banks and financial institutions doing business with the city to disclose their involvement in the illegal and unjust mortgage lending schemes, right? That led to the massive foreclosure in the Black communities. Because again, everything that's bad, we always get a lot of. First, they redlined us, right? So we couldn't get the proper mortgages, etc. And then all of a sudden, everybody's credit allowed them to get all these mortgages. So another question was on homeowners' Bill of Rights. So this is what Justina is referring to. She's referring to a number of questions that had actually been part of the Chicago's candidate questionnaire. And even though the election is over, we recommend that you really try to still read this, because what this did was laid a groundwork and a foundation for where we in the Black community need to consider important issues, right? Issues that have long-term ramifications. So Justina's just talked about the fact that we have a disenfranchisement. We're talking about killing off, I guess, the lack of generational wealth. Because if you lose the little land, many of our forefathers and parents, and we're talking about one generation, were able to buy a house, which they ended up paying a lot for. And then now we're having a problem with the PINs. So she's talking about that, so that's a generational wealth issue. And last time I saw Justina, she talked about you had a member, somebody with you, an attorney, whose mother had died 5 years ago. And when she talked about how they were getting ready to sell her property, they found that there was a $350,000 mortgage on this property. And this property had not been mortgaged. Mama had died 5 years ago. And once they went through talking to the state and some higher ups, they also took screen prints. But miraculously, this mortgage disappeared from the public records. So we have a question here. What's going on in the public records that a few calls can make a difference, right? Because if it's legit, it should be legit, right? So you know, we don't know. I don't know if we're going to know fully today from Justina and Naomi what is going on, but we're asking that these questions that we had asked in the questionnaire, land records audit, lender disclosures, and homeowners bill of rights ordinance, be something that city council and the mayor and other state officials be looking at, because there has been fraud. Something is happening. Because had the family not questioned this mortgage, right, then that means the family would have ended up with nothing on that property, because a bank who had no mortgage on the property would have gotten money in the closing, right? So something funny is going on. So Justina, you learned about this from your own experience, and then it seems like it has mushroomed, you know, into you trying to do social justice, right? And find out, well, my goodness, if this is what happened to me, what about others, right? And so you're seeing that not only were you impacted, but your neighbors, and now you're finding Inglewood and Harvey and all these other areas, right? And not necessarily just predominantly black areas, right?
Straight across the board, predominantly black and Latino areas.
Okay, so people of color. So people who we wouldn't expect to go and do what you did, a land audit.
I've looked at documents, even in their mortgage, even at the levels of the fraud. It initiates with the person who takes your loan information, the loan officer, and it takes the next step. It goes to the next step with the closing agent and the broker. I mean, just to be honest with you, those are the folks who review all of the upfront paperwork for most of the people who do refinances typically. You don't have an attorney on site with you when you're doing a refinance for a purchase, or if you're selling a property, yes. But for the loan officer in a homeowner's paperwork to put that they're African American when clearly they're Puerto Rican, okay, that they're an unmarried African American woman when they are a married Hispanic woman, that violates their homestead rights. And I'm by no means am I an attorney. This is all based on research, but again, that spouse has to sign off on that loan. Through the process, the same homeowner's PIN number was changed. Within that year, although their mortgage had been escrowed, and let's be clear, your PIN number and your mortgage are tied to your escrow and your tax payments with the assessor's office. If that PIN number gets changed and that history is deleted, then you owe possibly for that same tax year that you had already paid through escrow. This is where we came to a situation where homeowners in 1998 and 1999, yes, many years ago, had to suddenly begin to refinance their properties. Why? Because their PIN numbers suddenly changed. Well, I found all of this out last year, less than 1 year ago, after looking through the land records and trying to understand how my neighbors had the same PIN number and all of our mortgages were on our chain of title for 161620803200000. When you look at that same PIN number now, it doesn't reflect the information that it once reflected before. When you look at the neighbors on that same block and their mortgages in the land records, they have, again, 2 to 5 different PIN numbers. But when you look at the same neighbors, at the same time, everyone pretty much of the Quincy Homeowners Association had to in turn get refinances. Why? Because their property taxes had been sold and they were being threatened. Yes, the property taxes had been sold in 1998 and 1999. Even they were paid in escrow under the old PIN number through the mortgage company. Unfortunately, many of the mortgage companies went out of business. How do you prove that your property taxes were paid already?
Oh my goodness.
You filed a Freedom of Information Act with the Cook County Assessor's Office. So I did that. They didn't respond. I called them, they finally responded. Within 5 days, they're supposed to respond in Illinois. I spoke with the Maria, with the Divisions and Consolidations Department, and she said, what are you trying to do? This was over 20 years ago. I said, I'm trying to understand how our PIN number changed. That's like your social security number.
Right.
Isn't there a process? Isn't there a petitioning process for the division and consolidation of parcel PIN numbers? And she said, well, yes. I said, well, I'd like to get that paperwork. I would like a copy of it. By law, I have that right.
Right.
You know, the public should know. She said, well, the PIN numbers were deleted. And I said, what do you mean deleted? Can you send me that information in writing? She said, I don't know what you don't understand about this. And I quote, what do you not understand about this? All of the information in that account was deleted. It no longer exists. For PIN number 1616208-032-0000. So from 1993 to 1999, the homeowners on the block of Quincy in the Austin community paid their property taxes, and all of their PIN numbers and the tax history had been deleted by the Cook County Assessor's Office. There is no record of tax payments from 1993 to 1999 under 1616208-032-0000. All of us, 3 homeowners, have been paying property taxes to the same PIN number, according to our initial mortgages. It wasn't until 1998, 1999, when we began to refinance, some in 1997, when I guess they realized, the assessor's office or someone realized, oops, we made a mistake. And looking through the paperwork, you see the title company sending out requests to the city of Chicago. So I said, why is the city of Chicago involved? City of Chicago was involved because they had a covenant with the Quincy Homeowners Association where they had to live in the property, I believe, don't quote me on this, for 4, possibly up to 5 years before they would receive a $20,000 credit toward the mortgage.
So this was some kind of HUD financing. Yeah.
And most of the homeowners were not subprime home buyers at the time. It was not until, yes, the project was a Valerie Jarrett project with the Quincy Homeowners Association. And this was a project to take a dilapidated community, dilapidated properties in the Austin community, all of those really bad, boarded up, drug infested properties 20, 25 years ago that we see today. Same thing, again, reverse redlining, push low interest rates on the people initially, change their PIN numbers, have them refinance, delete their tax history. Either they refinance, one of the homeowners had 3 different good faith estimates, starting at 8%, where it capped off at about 12.5% for their interest rate. When their initial mortgage paperwork, let's be clear, they would have never had to refinance the property
if they had been paid properly.
Their taxes were not
right.
Exactly.
And then the interest rate went from what?
For the initial purchase of the property, the interest rate was significantly low because it was a government program.
Right.
And again, the key thing was to integrate the community. So you had a Caucasian family, a Puerto Rican family on the block, a Korean family, a Filipino family. They wanted
fair housing.
Yes, fair housing. So after the repeal of the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, and they implemented the prayerfully they repealed the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act.
Not quite.
After the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933, which gave us the protections that we needed so that financial institutions could not process fraudulent documents, and think of it like a supply chain management. There's a break in the supply chain process where the banks, the servicers are the banks, the attorneys who go into court and represent the banks and file the foreclosures, they're not properly filing the paperwork to do so. So when we go back to the land records and we look for that mortgage assignment that should have been there from that refinance from 1998, 1999, that mortgage in turn, that actual mortgage assignment, you can't track it back. You can't track that actual mortgage back because the company is closed.
Right.
Well, our Illinois laws say that our current law firms can go into court and do this, but in other states, in other counties, those documents are considered fraud, and it would not be possible.
Right. You have to have a chain of command. Okay. Okay. So, So, when you sent a letter, you said previously you told me that you had sent an open letter to the Cook County Assessor, Joseph Barrios, right, on 10/24/2014, and you also had sent an email to Attorney General Madigan on October 27, 2014, stating the case on the multiple pins. Did you get a response from either of them?
No.
Okay.
Neither responded. I've also made the recorder she's fully aware. No response. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. But our state settled for about $1.4 billion with McGraw-Hill for the Standard & Poor's mess. All of the bundled notes that McGraw-Hill and Standard & Poor's rated as AAA bundled loans, and these are the derivatives that are sold off on the stock market. These investors receive major tax breaks. They're REMIC, REMIC tax breaks under the mortgage-backed securities process, for lack of better terms. But this is what's happening. Our state received the money, and in turn they take that money and they allocate it to various organizations through whatever RFP process they put together. But the fact still remains that unworthy organizations that are not serving the community properly are not being held accountable because our state legislators won't pass the proper laws. In turn, our recorder will not be proactive through the process of protecting homeowners with the power that she has with her land registry. All we're asking the Recorder of Deeds to do is audit the Cook County land records. It's a simple thing.
Right.
If there's nothing to hide in the land records, why can't we audit them? Take some of that money from the National Mortgage Foreclosure Settlement, the Bank of America settlement, and even the Standard & Poor's settlement, and let's put some of that money toward an audit. $2,000 per pin, that's not a lot of money.
Right. Well, compared to what this has happened, I mean, this is, I'm overwhelmed just sitting here listening to what you've just said, right?
50 homes. We've done 50 homes so far, and we can show the improprieties in the land records. And every time we send this information out, several of the a handful of Illinois Black Caucus members are aware.
Right.
Everyone's dragging their feet.
Right. So you have to wonder what's going on there, right? Because we lack economics in our community. We can't buy, sell, and rent, at least these politicians, right? So somebody else obviously has. Because why would you not be concerned that something like this is happening? It sounds like fraud. Attorney Naomi, how can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on here?
Well, I want to double back and say that while the particulars that Justina has just detailed are current, new, contemporary, I want to bring attention to the context of how the Black community, communities of color, have been developed over time, have been manipulated over time, have been targeted for exploitation. Back in 2009, Blacks in Green did a community event with Professor Beryl Satter of Rutgers. She had written a book, Family Properties, Race, Real Estate, and the Exploitation of Black Urban America. And with particular reference to the kinds of improprieties, systemic in nature, that were happening on Chicago's West Side. This is a very fully documented, very well understood system of improprieties in which the families which owned the properties their lawyers, appraisers, real estate brokers, attorneys, judges, and legislators collaborated to ensure several things. Number one, that the white homeowning families, let's just say in the Lawndale area as a specific example. And I want to point out, just as on a personal note, the trauma and the courage and the sacrifice that an individual experiences having to drill down at this level to be able to uncover, understand, and otherwise transform a scenario in which improprieties, maybe it's just simple negligence, but certainly an injustice with economic impact has occurred, that Beryl Satter's family, her father was a lawyer at the time, a Jewish family, one of the home sellers on Chicago's West Side, and when in a moment of his own particular personal crisis of consciousness, he decided he could no longer participate in the system that was abusing and manipulating the black families of the Great Migration era, coming up south, as we say, for freedom and economic opportunity. When he had his crisis of consciousness and decided that he would no longer, not only would he no longer participate, but he would begin to tell the story of the improprieties that were happening, he received all manner of death threats. He was completely shunned by his peers in society. It was as if he had committed a mortal sin by unveiling the infrastructure of this contemptuous practice. The Contract Buyers League is a well-known. It's been written about. Jack McNamara is one of the current day legacy stewards who continues to tell the story in both financial terms and personal terms. So just to put it in a nutshell, the contracts that were brokered at the time by families who owned the property had all of the advantages from the bank's perspective of a mortgage, and none of the advantages to the homeowners, none of the protections. So it was really the worst part of a lease and the worst part of a mortgage put together for the families who were transacting. They were aspiring, they were courageous, they came a long distance on a foreign mission to upgrade their quality of life, and they were sold homes for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and more times the value of the actual value of the property on these contracts, where they could be vulnerable up until the very last contract payment to lose any rights of occupancy, and would not have been building any equity along the way of these payments. That's why we say it's the worst part of the mortgage and the worst part of the lease.
Right.
There's no advantages, no protections, and the process whereby these exorbitant rates were charged these families caused the social breakdown of the family by causing families to overcrowd into properties, causing people to have to work too many shifts, too many hours, causing the school systems to be occupied or overburdened by the number of children that they were duty-bound to serve, causing the children to suffer the absence of their parents after school, breakfast in the morning, walks to school. Many of these quality of life staples that we recognize as symbolic of the American way were systematically, cruelly, and in a sustained way denied intentionally to these black families. And I might add, the moral outrage that many of us feel today, even today, lo these many decades later, the moral outrage that we feel is compounded by the fact that the descendants of those children, of those families, of the Jewish families, of those communities which profited mercilessly from these transactions, will now today, without a hint of ambiguity or irony, talk about black people needing to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, talk about black people needing to work harder, talk about, you know, well, we did it, why can't you?
Right.
And although we understand from a spiritual perspective, and we got to go there, that God loves us all just in the very same way, we have to recognize that a healing is required, not just the reconciliation and the truth of what happened,
Right.
but the wounds of oppression.
Yeah.
We're suffering those today.
Right.
We barely made it alive out of the South, where Jim Crow terrorism had not a moment's rest.
Up here.
If you came by night with a torch, if you came by day with a rope, it didn't matter. Your life, your property, your humanity meant nothing. And to say that you're going to take heart and set out on an unknown journey to a better place and land there and unwittingly fall prey to this kind of inhumane treatment is that part of the American story that some of us really need to understand a lot better, okay? So I want to say that the West Side injustices were mirrored on the South Side.
Right.
I, at this moment, live in historic West Woodlawn, Chicago's first black middle-class neighborhood, the southernmost tip of Bronzeville, and what we otherwise call the Black Belt. We understand that the rules of segregation sequestered us into this narrow strip of southeast lakefront land running from south of the Loop down to essentially South Chicago Avenue. And we also understand that the restrictive covenants of the time and the place legally forbade white families from deeding their property to an African American family.
Right.
It happened in 1948 that the Hansberry family, and this of course is the magnificent Pulitzer Prize winning Lorraine Hansberry family, her father, with the power of the court this time on our side, was able to overturn the decades-long system of restricted covenants in a lawsuit in 1948. However, let's be very clear. Not only the amount of money that we lost in these fraudulent real estate transactions, because many people lost their money and lost their property.
Right.
Okay. But what they would have otherwise been able to save, invest in their children's well-being, or otherwise create beautiful homes, neighborhoods with a vibrant social network. We were devastated. The foreclosure tsunami of today is just another in a very long line of immoral, unjust, legally sanctioned, and long-held practices that have been that have had a genocidal effect on the Black community. When we talk about community wealth building,
Right.
it's a very well understood principle that the family home is one of the principal instruments of wealth building,
Right.
through appreciation and inheritance. When robbed generation after generation,
Right.
it's like, you know, when you're a kid and you open up your first little bank account and you learn about compound interest, right? You know that the amounts that you didn't invest, that you could have invested, would have grown in a compounding way over time. The net result of that practice and many other practices that of systemic discrimination, structural injustice, we know that those have taken a toll. They've taken a psychic, social, emotional, and a financial toll. They've created an extreme wealth disparity,
Yes.
racial in nature. And today, when we look at this next wave of thought about how the Black community should be redeveloped,
Right.
revived, we must be extraordinarily vigilant that we are demanding that there's a deep analysis about consequences of every policy, of every practice, of every payment, that we understand that unintended consequences do happen.
Right.
But we are also very clear that the consequences of the foreclosure tsunami were not unintended.
Right.
They were specifically intended. And we have not found in any of the settlements that Justina mentioned a revival in the Black community where we have been devoured. And so it's especially important now with government funds being tightened in every turn, that we make sure that whatever funding is in play, whatever institutions are participating, whatever programs are being developed, that they are established on one foundation, and that foundation ought to be, must be, and through the institutions that we've talked about today, some of the organizations, shall be, is community wealth building.
Right.
We must target the end result of community wealth building. Are you committed to community wealth building or are you not? Because if you are,
Right.
we have best practices, case studies, experiments even, that we can engage in that will tend and trend toward that result. But the foundation, the commitment comes first. That's the question. Are you committed to community wealth building?
So as we look forward to the next cycle of elections, that's going to be one of the questions I'm hearing now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, you know what? God still loves you. But we just need to know.
But you know, it's interesting because if you ask the question, are you for community wealth building? Most of the communities that these people live in, they would be for it. It's just that when everything comes to us, then there's a different set of rules.
There's a different impact. There's a different result. So we know that community wealth building will require ownership of the land, ownership of the businesses, and a conservation lifestyle, meaning we can't all that bling and all that space and all those cars and all those things and all that turnover and buying. And of course, yes, America's GNP is based on how much can we get people out the door and into the stores.
Right.
It's a flawed paradigm.
Right.
We can't get there from here.
Right.
We are past 400 parts per million greenhouse gases, well understood as the tipping point in the global warming crisis that we find ourselves in now. When Blacks in Green was founded in 2007, we were at 370 parts per million. Everyone from kindergartners to corporations around the world were rallying. We're going to get to 350. We're going to roll that bad boy back, because we know we've got to get that rolled back in order to have, according to Bill McKibben, who's written some of the holy grail on this, a planet similar to the one on which all of civilization developed and life on Earth evolved. That's a paraphrase. If it's not going to be similar, is that a world that you want to live in? And so we see the effects of extreme weather taking place now, and we see the effects of the extreme wealth disparity taking place now. And that's why, as an environmental and an economic development organization, Blacks in Green works at the intersection of environment and economy, and with these very fundamental components of housing, under our fourth principle of Green Village Building. We authored and we teach the 8 principles of Green Village Building, what we call a whole system solution for the whole system problem, common to Black communities everywhere. But we also understand it's a culture-specific prescription, but with universal value, because who doesn't want to walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, and walk to play?
That's right.
Everyone wants to.
That's right.
And overwhelmingly in the Black community, we don't have anything remotely like that.
Right.
And those of us of a certain age do remember growing up in neighborhoods where that was the rule. And systematically, we contend over the decades, the deconstruction of that high ground has been taking place. And we're just about as low as we can go. We can only just go into labor camps from here.
Right. It's interesting that you say that, because we had a guest before, right, that had talked about the same thing, talked about when he was growing up that there was a vibrant economic base.
That's right.
In his community, and the same thing. And when you look at West Palm Beach, which is one of the wealthiest counties in the United States, they've gone back to town, that kind of town center mall type of thing, right, with buildings, stores underneath and apartments above, which when you go to Brooklyn, that's what you see, right? So you can walk to your stores, it's right downstairs. You know, between the two of you, you have brought back so much. Justina is showing you how policies and we can have all kind of rules put into place, but if the heart of the people who implement it have not changed, which is what we've seen in America that has circumvented every rule and law that has ever passed, right? The same result to Black people is what happens, right? And then, as you said, you get the group of people who say, why can't you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps? Well, we don't have no boots, much less the bootstraps, because you've done stolen them. And then, you know, you pretend that you don't understand. It is so enlightening to listen to the two of you, because sometimes in our community people go crazy. And sometimes the people that you see that are out there that are crazy, they're not crazy. They're actually the sane ones. They are seeing all of this, right? They happen to pass by something, and it's hard to process.
It's hard to live with every day.
You guys have taken that time to kind of break it down into bite sizes for yourself. But in doing that, you're now able to pass on some of that knowledge to us.
And I want to say, passing that on, that Justina is going to be one of our featured speakers at African Festival of the Arts. Blacks in Green has the Green Village Pavilion there each year for the past couple years. And this year we're, again, doing 4 days of programming. The first day is Friday evening. We're opening with green drinks. We're bringing back the beloved Chicago institution of green drinks in a new way. Friday.
Not Irish.
Not Irish. Not Irish.
Okay.
Our eco drinks from 5 to 7. And this is, of course, in Washington Park over Labor Day, September 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. So Friday night, we're going to open with green drinks. But on Saturday, we're going to be looking at the Great Migration Centennial. That centennial launches in January of 2016. And we are doing a day of programming that will feature the stories, the experts. We'll be having Congo Square come out and do recitations from Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns. Again, a reception every evening from 5 to 7, but speakers during the day. And Justina will be speaking on Saturday at 3 o'clock. It's part of what we call the track we call the Southside Homesteaders Fair. We're going to be bringing in, again, tools and teachers on this issue of how to take a higher ground where housing and the development of housing and housing in community is concerned. And we're going to be looking at how to, the subtitle is Calling My Children Home. Okay. We have got to get our African American families back from the suburbs into the inner city. If we don't move back and reclaim our inner city legacy communities, we will, just the way that Harlem was once 90% black, and now it's 30% black, we will lose these great cultural bastions of our American story. So when we say calling our children home, we mean to say we have a broker partnership where we're going to be showing the homes that are available in the market in West Woodlawn, which is our Green Village Building pilot. We're going to be working with our bank allies and others to make sure that our young professionals coming out of college, our trade workers working in the skilled trades, and our empty nesters and our young families, that they recognize that there's gold in these communities.
Right.
There's gold because there's soul, because there's proximity to transportation. There's all kinds of resources, parks, universities, the commercial corridors. Come back, buy land, buy homes. The market manipulation that causes the evacuation of value in the market is designed for outside investors
to scoop up.
And
that's what
let's be those outside investors. And let's make sure that the seniors in our neighborhoods are stabilized. Let's make sure that the neighbors in our community are the investors. First tier investors are our neighbors. That ought to be the holy grail of community wealth building. That the practices, the policies, and the payments are structured for preferential purchasing.
I think that's going to be an interesting struggle at the moment, considering a friend of mine said he sat on some 2040 plan for the city of Chicago, right? And this was from the 80s. See, because they plan short, they plan long term while we survive today. And in the 2040 plan, the city of Chicago was going to be 10% black. Beautiful place, but we just were not going to be there. Right? So these things that you're saying are real. Now, what we're going to run up against is fair housing, right? Because we're talking about that we want to see black communities. Because guess what? When you go to other communities, they call them Chinatown, Koreatown.
They absolutely
Little Italy,
do. Unashamedly.
This, right?
Unashamedly.
But we can't say we live in Blacktown, right?
We decline that prescription. We're black people. We're African American people. We have a history. We have a story. We're proud of it. Even the pain, even the tragedy. We're indestructible, and we are genius. And many of us were raised to love our people. And let me just say, for the record, yeah, some of my best friends are white. That's such a stupid thing to have to say, because this isn't about who my friends are.
Right.
This is about love of self.
Right.
If I love myself, I want to be able to see myself in a positive light in the media, in the banks, in the neighborhoods, in the schools, in the institutions that matter in my neighborhood, and I don't need to have to apologize for that. And we do believe, and especially at Blacks Are Green, we believe in diversity and inclusion, but we are very, very specific about our mission for the African American
Not
community.
at the exclusion of ourselves.
Yeah, and we don't call ourselves a minority.
Right, we're not a minority. The people of the world do look like us. Justina, we're running out of time. Would you like to have some closing words?
Yes. In 2012, there were about 44,000 within a 9-month period, 44,000 foreclosures that were filed, and all of this information can be found publicly in the Cook County government website. From in 2013, from January through March of 2015, 2 years or so, we're looking at nearly 52,000 foreclosures that have been filed. In 2012, that's when they had the National Mortgage Foreclosure Settlement. Think about how many families within a 9-month period have been impacted by foreclosures. And then think about how many of those documents in the land records, how many of those documents may not be
real. Fake pins and all.
Truth be told.
You know?
I challenge everyone to look at Register O'Brien. He set a great model for the country to do land records audits in your registry of deeds. So again, Register John O'Brien, Southern Salem, Essex, Massachusetts. He conducted a land records audit and found that over 20,000 of the documents that they meaning the servicers and the law firms used to foreclose on properties in his registry were fraudulent. And in turn, he created a process for the servicers and the law firms to have to go through in order to file these foreclosures. So in turn, I asked him to validate whether or not my mortgage assignment was fraudulent or real. And I have an affidavit from the Register of Deeds in Southern Salem, Essex, Massachusetts, along with 10 other homeowners, where his registry would not accept this mortgage assignment. But the Cook County Recorder of Deeds registry, they said that law holds no weight because that's Massachusetts weight. I challenge the Illinois state legislators, especially the Illinois Black Caucus, to step up and do something about this and pass an Illinois Homeowner Bill of Rights.
Well, ladies, we've run out of time, and as you can see, this is something that's not going to end here. We're probably going to have more shows on this. We want to thank Naomi, and we want to thank Justina for coming in and sharing the historic plus the current, right? And just kind of tying it in. It was actually a great match for both of you to be here today, right? I want to thank you both. I want to encourage you, Justina, to continue to do this work and what you're doing for us, Naomi. We really need to talk more about this Green Village building, right? Because it is a solution. It is a solution for us. And so, folks, I just want to say, we have people in our community of this quality, right? So when you hear all this garbage about the Black community, it's a farce. I meet these people every day. So we want you to get involved. We want you to contact Justina. She gave you her information. Contact Blacks in Green. You can find them on the website and get involved. Come out to the African Festival and participate in the Green Pavilion. Go out and get them green drinks on Friday night. Go out and listen to Justina on Saturday, right? And learn more about how we can become part of the solution and not continue with this farce, you know, where every day we look, more of our wealth is being transferred to other people and they pretend they don't understand what's going on. So I want to thank Naomi for really bringing that. I'm going to go look up that book because I'm like, oh my God. Okay?
Yes.
So ladies, thank you. My name is Cecile Johnson. I am CEO of African Development Plan, and I want to thank Global City Unity for giving us this opportunity to talk here today, to share in this information that is of great impact to our community as part of our Connecting the Dots series, a 2015 response to issues facing the Black community in Chicago, and it is a collaboration of African